So, my name is Emily and welcome to my channel, The Anxious Reader. Today we are sitting out on the dock because I didn't want to disturb my housemates. So yeah, we're doing a little beachside video today. So, since this is my first video, it's going to be kind of a lot of things. I think first we're going to sort of chat through the books that I read in April. I had a very good reading month. I got through a bunch of books that have been on my TBR for years. And then I also finished my Owls. I'm going for the Career of Alchemist, so I had to finish all 12 reading prompts for the Owls, and I did that. I finished the last book, I think, on either April 29th or 30th, so it was a little bit down to the wire, but I did it. And it wasn't really down to the wire because I didn't only read the 12 books, I read other books as well, so I could have found a way to fit in other books I had read into the last prompt, but I had sort of decided at the beginning of the month these are the 12 books, and it took me the whole month to get around to those 12. Anyway, so this video we're going to chat through those books. At the end we will sort of talk about my ideas for the channel, what I want to do with it, why I felt compelled to start it now, because it's sort of a random time to start a channel, but yeah, so that's what this video is going to be, so let's get into it. We're going to chat through the books that I read in April. We'll just go through some stats first. I have them written down here, so let's see. In April, I read 7,610 pages, which is amazing. I read 21 books. Of those 21, 10 were audiobooks and 11 were physical books. That number is a bit abnormal for me. I usually physically read a lot more and listen to fewer, but this month with the quarantine stuff and us being home more often, we sort of have done a lot of home improvement projects, and so I basically redid our entire kitchen, and while I was doing that I was just listening to audiobooks, so I got through 10 audiobooks doing that. Of the 11 physical books, which I guess I shouldn't say physical because some of them were ebooks, but of the 11 books that I consumed ocularly instead of orally, 4 were graphic novels or manga. And then as far as genre breakdowns, 5 were adult fiction, 5 were YA fantasy, 2 were thrillers, 6 were YA fiction, 1 romance, and then 2 classics, which I think is probably pretty true to what my reading stats have been for the past year. There's been a lot of YA fantasy and a lot of YA fiction, and I sort of want to change that. I want to trend towards more classics and more literary fiction because that's what I find myself enjoying more, and I just for some reason haven't been picking it up as much. So we are going to work on changing that, which we will talk a little bit more about when we go through the books that I want to read in May, because most of them are classics. I think we're going to go in order of when I read them. So the first book that I finished in April was called Eat and Love Yourself. It was a graphic novel that I got an e-arc of on NetGalley. Gave this one 3.5 stars. I think I rated it 4 on Goodreads, but it's around a 3.5 for me. It was basically about this girl who was dealing with sort of coming to terms with the fact that she has an eating disorder. It was interesting. The art style was beautiful. The only problem with it was that it was very short and it sort of ended right as she was deciding to work on recovering from this eating disorder. So I just wish it would have been longer and sort of would have followed her as she's actually getting better instead of just realizing that she needs to get better. It felt sort of unfinished. As a standalone, I would rate it 3.5 just because it felt sort of rushed. But if there are going to be more, then it would be around a 4-star for me. The next book that I read was Heartstopper Volume 2 and 3 by Alice Oseman. I feel like everybody on BookTube knows what these are. They're very cute. I only have the 3rd one here because I lent the first 2 to my sister, so she has them right now. But they are just an adorable graphic novel series about... Hi! Hi, honey! Hi! What you doing? They are about these boys who meet, and one of them is openly gay, and the other one, throughout books 1 and 2, is sort of coming to terms with the fact that he is not straight as he has sort of thought he was his whole life. So it's them beginning a relationship and working through how to basically come out as a couple, and it's adorable. Everybody and their mother has read this and loved it, and I was no different. I gave both volumes 2 and 3 5 stars. I love them. They're great. Yeah. Next book I read was an audiobook. It is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. Elizabeth Kostova. It's a chunker. It's 640 pages-ish. So yeah, this is a big boy, and I have had it on my shelves forever. I think I got it in high school, and I've just been sort of carting it around with me ever since, and I never got around to it. And it is a story about these historians, history professors, and various academics. They are sort of discovering that Dracula might be a real figure, might not be just a fictional like horror movie character. He's a real person, and so it's them hunting down Dracula basically. And it sounded really great. It sounded interesting. It sounded like my kind of dark academia book. Like, I think I should have loved this. It had all of the right things for me to love it, but I just didn't. I don't really know what about it fell flat for me, just that it did. I gave this one 2 stars. It was very long. I think it was unnecessarily long. It was kind of a slog to get through, even though I was listening to it, and usually it's a lot easier to sort of fly through an audiobook, but even listening to it, it was a bit of a struggle at some points. I was just a little underwhelmed by it, but I'm happy to finally have it off of my TBR. The next one I read was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I picked this up because I've seen a lot of people on Goodreads and on BookTube talk about this and how like dark and twisty and nasty it is, and it was gross. There was a lot of stuff in here, like every possible trigger warning is in here. If you are sensitive to any sort of sexual assault or rape or violence, skip this one. But if you can handle violence and gore, it was good. It was very good. I listened to the audiobook and it was very fast to get through. I think I got through it in 2 days maybe. Like, I just couldn't stop listening to it. Yeah, it was great. This was my first Karen Slaughter. I think I'm gonna pick up The Good Daughter next, maybe, because I found that audiobook at my library. So I think that might be my next Karen Slaughter book. But if you guys have recommendations, let me know, because I know she has like a ton. But yeah, I would be interested in reading more from her. The next book I read was The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. This book was incredible. It made my little queer heart so happy. It was adorable. This book is basically about this girl named Sunny who had a heart transplant. She's sort of recovering from having heart disease. Just new heart, new Sunny, and what she wants to do as the new Sunny is she wants to do a lot of cool things, and she wants to kiss a boy, and she wants a new best friend. So this book is her just sort of figuring out who she is now that she has the ability to be a person again rather than just a sick girl. She can actually like have a personality, go out and do things, and so it's her figuring out what she wants to do. And she meets another girl whose name is Quinn. She meets Quinn and they become new best friends, and they set off on this quest together to kiss boys because they haven't had their first kisses yet. And it's adorable. It's queer. Sunny realizes that maybe she doesn't want to kiss boys, maybe she wants to kiss girls, which is totally cool. And it's her coming out to her family and coming out to her friends, and it was adorable. It made me cry. Books hardly ever make me cry, but this one got to me, guys. So good. It was so cute. I absolutely loved that one. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Next book I read was Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. I don't know if you can see that. This one I gave 3 stars. I listened to it on audio. It was interesting. I had heard a lot of people talk about it on BookTube, and so it's sort of been on my radar for a while. I have all of the other books in the series, so I'm gonna continue on at some point. It was interesting. I liked most of the characters. A lot of it felt just sort of formulaic YA fantasy. There wasn't too much that was sort of new or novel in here. This book, for those of you that don't know, so it's about these 3 sisters, and they are supposed to basically fight to the death, and only one of them can be the queen. So it's them preparing to basically kill their sisters. My problem with this was there was just certain things in here that didn't track. Some of the story didn't completely make sense, I don't know. It just wasn't great, I think. It wasn't super interesting. Most of this book, I mean, the battle between the sisters for the throne didn't even happen in this book. Like, this was just the lead up to that. So I was a bit disappointed in that. I think I've heard people say that the next books in the series are better and more exciting, because this one felt just like a lot of exposition and a lot of world building groundwork that had to happen. I think the next books might sort of be more interesting and more fast paced. That being said, if I don't like the second one more, I probably won't finish the 3rd or 4th ones, but just because I'm not sure it's gonna be worth it if the second one isn't really good. So yeah, we'll see. The next one I read, I don't have a physical copy of. I got the audiobook from my library, and it Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I gave this one 4 stars. I was a little apprehensive going into it because I thought it was going to be very heavy on the sort of courtroom drama part of this book, which there was some of that, but that wasn't the main focus. I really don't like courtroom dramas, like any of those sort of procedurals, like cop shows and like NCIS, Law and Order, things like that just don't interest me that much. That's why I haven't gotten around to this book sooner. It was really good. It's about this girl who grows up basically alone in a swamp in North Carolina. Her family sort of abandons her one by one, and she ends up basically raising herself in this hut, like little falling down shack in the marsh of North Carolina. And so she's sort of ostracized from the nearby town. She doesn't go to school, she's not educated, she's poor, and so she basically just grows up completely isolated because of that. So it's just about her growing up, and then we learn that when she is in her maybe mid-20s, a local boy is murdered, or is dead and assumed murdered. Everybody's convinced that it must be her that killed this boy because, you know, she's poor and she didn't go to school, so she's stupid, and so people are convinced that she's responsible for this murder, and the whole trial is basically a witch hunt of them trying to pin it on her. And this book, the trial, when the verdict came from the jury, I actually gasped out loud. I was so convinced that I knew how this book was going to end, and then I was wrong. I am rarely that surprised by a book, and so that was really good. I really enjoyed this book. Next, I read History of the Rain by Niall Williams. I gave this one 4 stars. This one took me a really long time to read just because The way it's told is so... Everything in here is done intentionally. There's not a single word or sentence in here that Williams didn't put there on purpose. Everything is serving a purpose, and the writing is just so unique and so like dense, but in a good way. It's beautiful. It's so sad, but it was so good. So good. I have to go to work soon, so we're gonna speed this up. Okay. The next book I read I don't have physically because I lent my copy to my sister to read. Stig by A.S. King. I gave this one 5 stars. I really love weird magical realism books, and this was exactly what I was looking for, and it was incredible. You can find more info on Goodreads. I'll link all of these books down below. Yeah, this one was great. I loved it. All of the characters were amazing. I did predict it pretty early on. I knew what was going on, but it was still good. The payoff was still great. Okay, next was Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. This is a sensationalist novel, and so it's like, it's very dark and twisty, and Lady Audley is this evil character. Mr. Audley is trying to figure out what happened to his friend who goes missing, and you come to realize that Lady Audley may or may not have been responsible for killing him, and it's just this man's quest to figure out what happened to his friend and then catch Lady Audley in this crime, and it was good. It was very good. I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read Daisy Miller by Henry James. This is a little short book. I think it was only like 70 pages or something. I gave this one 2 stars. I was very disappointed in it. I don't know. I recently read A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, and I liked that one a lot more. They sort of resemble each other in that it's like an American in Europe on vacation during the summer and like cavorting with locals and all of the sort of like societal pressures on these young women. And so I don't know. It was fine. It wasn't anything great. I did not like the ending. I don't think it was a fair ending for Daisy. I think she deserved better treatment, but I also think that Henry James did that on purpose. I think it was an intentional thing. He was trying to make a statement about women in this time, but I don't know. It didn't work for me, but I've heard that this one is sort of like a short version of A Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, and so maybe that one, if it sort of goes along the same lines, would be better just because it's so much, it's a chunker. But I think that that would give it more time to sort of develop complex characters and have the sort of discussions that I think he was trying to have in this. So I am going to pick up that soon, I think. Yeah. The next one I don't have physically. I listened to it on audio. It was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I gave this one 2 stars. This one is very sort of polarizing. A lot of people love the ending. A lot of people hate the ending. I hated it. I don't want to say too much because it is a psychological thriller, and so I think you should kind of go in blind. Yeah, the ending it just really didn't work for me. It's basically a domestic thriller, but then it's sort of supernatural. And the ending, I don't know. I didn't see it coming, so I guess that's good, but also I hated it. So yeah, 2 stars. Next, I read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I listened to this on audio, and I sort of flipped through as it went along and looked at the pictures. I read this first one when I was a kid, when it first came out, but I never continued on with the series, so I picked this up, and I think I'm gonna keep reading, maybe. I did not enjoy this as much as I remember liking it when I read it as a kid. I gave this one 2 stars, 2.5, somewhere in there. I don't know, I didn't like the main character. It was just sort of a basic YA fantasy for me, again. It was fine. My favorite part, I said this in my Goodreads review, honestly, my favorite part is the creepy pictures in here. They weren't taken by the author, so they don't really have any bearing on the book because they weren't done by the creator of the book. So I think that's not a great sign if my favorite book wasn't, I mean, my favorite part of the book wasn't done by the author. Next, I read My Dad's Secret Ambition, which is a manga. I got this as an e-arc on NetGalley. I think it's out by now, but I'm not exactly sure. I gave this one 3 stars. It was funny. I actually really enjoyed it for the first like half, but then it got sort of repetitive, and it's very wholesome, but also it's just kind of the same over and over again. So it just got kind of old at some point, but it was cute. Okay, we gotta go. Next. Okay, the next book I read was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This one is a middle grade fantasy. I read it for one of my OWLS prompts. I read it for the one that was read mostly at night, which I think sort of, not ruined, but hampered my enjoyment of this book because I read it like as I was getting into bed at night, and then I would read a couple of pages and then fall asleep. So it took me literally all month to read this because I was reading it in like 5-page increments because I kept falling asleep. And because of that, I just kept getting sort of ripped out of the story. I think if I read this just at my own pace during the day when I'm a normal, awake, functioning human, I would have enjoyed this a lot more. So yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. I think the book is good. It was beautifully written. It was very cute. I liked all of the characters, but just my reading experience with this one was not great. Next one, I read The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. I read this one on audio. It was fine. I've heard mixed reviews on this one. I gave this one 2.5 stars. It was just fine. I am not a big romance reader, so I don't know why I keep trying romance and I just never enjoy them. It was fine. It was romance. There's nothing much else to say about it. Next, I read Before I Let Go by, I can't pronounce her last name, so I'll just put up the cover here and you can read her last name. Listen to this one on audio on Scribd. I gave this one 4 stars. I don't have the physical copy because it was my sister's, and so I returned it to her when I finished. I really enjoyed this one. It was not what I was expecting. I knew that it was sad. I knew it was about a girl who had died and her best friend is sort of figuring out what happened to her, but I thought it was going to be just a normal, like, hard-hitting contemporary, but it was also sort of magical realism. Like, there was sort of supernatural elements to it. It was just a lot more interesting than I was expecting it to be, and a lot of discussions about mental health and mental illness and the stigmas on those, and I thought that they were really well done. I'm sort of mad that I put off reading it for so long because my sister gave it to me like a year and a half ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I really liked it. We are almost done here, guys. Okay, so next I read The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. I really enjoyed this one. It's about a girl whose brother tried to kill himself and is now institutionalized. He's in a recovery program for an eating disorder, and she is sent to live with her uncle for the summer to sort of figure out her life because she is a mess. So yeah, it's good. It's good. It was emotional. It was an emotional time. But I really enjoyed the writing. I liked the story. I liked most of the characters. Yeah, it was good. I gave this one 4 stars. Okay, next. Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez. This one I gave 1.5 stars. I don't really want to talk about it. Can we just appreciate the pretty cover and not talk about the mess that was this book? I really don't want to talk about it. If you want to know more about my thoughts on this book, go read my Goodreads review because I was kind of mean and I just don't really want to talk about it anymore. this was very disappointing. I really didn't like it. The best part is the cover. Yeah. All right, last one that I read in April was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I listened to this one on Scribd. I've had this book for a long time and I just never got around to it. Really liked it. It's like a dark fantasy thing, a lot darker than I was expecting, but I was really into it. Yeah, I liked it fine. I gave it 4 stars. It was good. So that was the mountain of books that I read in April. Thanks for sticking around. That was a slog, but we did it, guys. I think now we will sort of chat about this channel and what I want to do with it. Basically, I started watching BookTube about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. Before then, I just didn't really know that it was a thing. I didn't watch a ton of YouTube. I've always been a reader. There hasn't been a time in my life when I wasn't reading and when I didn't consider myself a book lover. It's just always been part of who I am, even as a kid. There was definitely like a drop off at some point where I just wasn't reading as much as I had been when I was younger, like in elementary and middle school. I think in high school I sort of got too busy and so it wasn't really a priority anymore. And that lasted through college and through grad school. I just didn't have the time. So I was still reading, but it wasn't anywhere near as much as I'm reading now. Last year was my best reading year ever. I read 130 books last year, which is crazy. I think because I found BookTube and I sort of fell in love with reading again. Not that I had ever really fallen out of love with it. I just kind of couldn't stop reading last year, and that's continuing into this year. I think I'm on track to read even more this year, which is amazing. But I have sort of been thinking about starting my own channel because I think BookTube is a lot of YA, specifically fantasy, and then a lot of sort of romance and contemporary books, which is great. There's nothing wrong with those. I enjoy those sometimes. I sort of found myself reading a lot of those things last year because I was being influenced by BookTube and I just wasn't enjoying most of them, honestly. I was enjoying some, but the ones that I enjoyed the most that I read last year were classics and sort of like literary fiction, which I just think are sort of underrepresented on BookTube. And I have started recently to find a few people who are talking about those kind of books, like Emma from the channel Emmy and Carolyn Marie Reads. I found them recently. Drinking by My Shelf, she does a lot of literary fiction. And so that sort of inspired me to make my own channel and talk about that kind of stuff because I just think that it's very underrepresented as a whole on the BookTube sphere. Still, I'm probably going to read fantasy and YA books because I do enjoy them sometimes, but I think I'm going to start to be more discerning when I'm picking them and when I'm deciding to buy them, rather than just seeing somebody talk about it on BookTube and immediately buying the book and then realizing afterwards like, oh, I don't really have the same reading taste as this person, and so maybe I shouldn't have spent money buying books that they enjoyed because in all likelihood I'm not going to enjoy it, which has happened a lot recently. So I'm sort of starting this channel to hone in and really refine my reading taste and figure out what I like, what works for me, and then talk about it and hopefully find other people that feel the same way about the books that I love. So yeah, this is sort of a selfish thing. I just want to sort of figure out what I like and then find other people that want to talk about those same things because I just haven't been able to find a ton of that in this space. So yeah, that's why I started. You expect from this channel, I think for now it'll be wrap-ups and TBRs maybe. I also might do reading vlogs if you guys are interested in that. My boyfriend and I are talking about maybe doing a read through of Harry Potter later this year because he's never read them, so we might like do a joint vlog of that. I think that would be interesting to get his reactions because I think he's seen most of the movies, but I don't think he's seen all of the movies in their entirety, and I don't think he's seen them in order. So I don't know how much he knows about the story, but I think it would be interesting to see his reactions to the books. So I'll see if I can convince him to do that because I think that would be interesting. So maybe some vlogs. I really like the idea of just doing like a real-time read with me where I just like sit down somewhere like on a couch or on my porch or something and just read for half an hour and film it, and then you guys can sort of use that as encouragement for you to sit down and get your daily reading in. I like that idea. And we also might have some sort of writing content. I have a new project that I'm working on, and I think that this channel might be a good way to sort of hold me accountable to that, because I always start writing projects and then I get really, really excited and I write a big chunk of it, and then I just sort of lose steam and peter out, and then I never go back to it. So I have a bunch of like partially written stories, but I don't want that to happen this time because I'm really excited about this concept and these characters that I'm working on. So I think that making maybe videos like live write-in video, not live, but write-in videos where we just sit, and the same sort of thing as like the read with me, where we just sit and write for half an hour or work on whatever you guys are working on. Just have me on in the background while I'm working through something, and then you guys be doing your own writing project or reading or painting or whatever it is. I think this is just a way for me to figure out what I like and get stuff done, basically. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I am nervous to post this. I don't know. I'm also nervous to edit this because I really hate the sound of my own voice. So I don't really know how YouTubers edit video of themselves all day, because I think I would just get sick of myself eventually. Not eventually. I think it would happen pretty soon, really early on. Like as soon as I start editing, I think I'm gonna hate myself a little bit, but we'll see. So thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, I would love to chat with you guys in the comments. We can talk about, I don't know, what you want to see, what you're reading. Tell me what you think of the books that I talked about here. Yeah, just tell me what you would be interested in seeing. Yeah, so thanks for watching. My name is Emily. This has been The Anxious Reader, and I look forward to seeing you soon.